Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Please go around the room and introduce ourselves. I'm Grisha.
My name is Roy.
Jack.
My name is Cass.
Tim.
I'm Brad. Rob.
My name is Dale.
Peter.
I'm Hal.
Jeff. My name is Joe.
Jay.
Don.
Jerry.
My name is Caleb.
Matthew.
My name is Francesco.
Larry.
Tom. I'm Greg.
My name is Michael.
Rich.
Max. Scott.
I'm David.
Welcome, everyone. Our teacher today is Dorothy Hunt. Dorothy Hunt serves as the spiritual director of Moon Mountain Sangha, teaching at the request of Adyashanti. She has practiced psychotherapy since 1967 and is the founder of the San Francisco Center for Meditation and Psychotherapy. Self-inquiry is taught by Ramana Maharshi, led to the first of a series of awakenings. In meeting Adyashanti, she was invited to see beyond identifications with either the absolute or the relative. Dorothy is the author of Only This and Leaves from Moon Mountain, a contributing author to The Sacred Mirror, Listening from the Heart of God, and the online journal Undivided. Dorothy offers satsang retreats and private meetings in the Bay Area and elsewhere by invitation. For more information, you can visit her website, dorothyhunt.org. So thank you. Welcome.
Welcome. Good morning. It's really a pleasure to be back with you. I was surprised this morning. I was looking at your website just to make sure this was the right day, and I saw that the last time I was here, I was speaking about the ridgepole, and that was on your summer newsletter. So that was surprising to me, but I remember that time together with a lot of joy, actually. So I thought earlier today that I would speak to you about the play of presence and personhood, but as I was having my breakfast, that was not what was going to be talked about, apparently. I just follow instructions. So what I want to explore with you today is really this love that flows from emptiness. How about that? Adyashanti once observed that he had discovered there was something that people were more afraid of than death, and that was love. Because you could stay separate until your dying breath, but you can't stay separate in love. And so the love that I want to try to point to or invite us to explore together is a love that's not divided. We talk about true nature, and often it's described as this empty awareness that seems transcendent. It's out here, and maybe we have a sense of it coming here. But I really like to talk about it as the heart of awareness, because awareness itself, when it's only the transcendent, it can feel really detached from our lives, our human lives, right? And sometimes there's a sense that if we awaken, we're supposed to just hang out in the transcendent. But this that's transcendent really gets to move through these human expressions. They're the expressions of our true nature, each of us. And when it moves, it feels like the first movement of this that we call true nature or Buddha nature is actually love. That right out of this emptiness that we can't. I say emptiness because it's empty of definition. When the mind looks into emptiness, it goes, but it's not the mind's idea of emptiness. It's this infinite potential that you are, that I am, that life is, to be, just to be. It's this beingness. So it appears, doesn't it, that this that we are actually just loves to be, because it is being everything, every moment, in your life and mine, in this life of the world and the universe. So this sense of beingness, it comes out of the expression of true nature, the expression of emptiness, you could say. So when we talk about emptiness, what's it empty of? That's a question that might arise. What is emptiness empty of? It's empty of separation. It's empty of definition. It's empty of a separate self. It's empty of concepts. And so right out of this that's empty of those things that keep us separate, love flows in its most, in its deepest expression. It's every expression of love, whether it's love for our partner, our pets, our life, or our job, whatever, those are expressions of the love. But this that I want to point to is deeper than any of those, loving of something else. It's a love that doesn't know how to separate itself. It's a love that actually loves every speck of us, through and through, through and through, through and through. If you've never experienced that, I encourage you to open your heart to experience that, because it is an amazing thing to realize that there's something in you that loves every speck. It's not a conditional love. It doesn't say, I'll love you when. It doesn't say, I'll love you if you perfect yourself. It doesn't say, I'll love you, when you become someone else. It just loves. In that way, we could call it a really indiscriminate love. It doesn't discriminate based on conditions. And that's why we can't separate it from our true nature. Our true nature is not dependent on conditions either. It's actually free in you and in me to be here, to just be here for what's here. And it's not just being here for what's here, it's being here as what's here. And that sometimes is lost when we divide form and formlessness. The Heart Sutra says form is exactly formlessness. Formlessness is exactly form. We think that that's something about two, but when you really look into the nature of this form and formlessness, you realize it's not. It's exactly. Certainly we have different expressions, infinite expressions of form. But that which is our essence is never separate from form, and it's never separate from this moment, and it's never separate from an expression of itself. So we might say without awareness, you would not know a single thing. You wouldn't know your thoughts, you wouldn't know your feelings, you wouldn't know a name, you wouldn't know a color, you wouldn't know an experience or a memory. There's no way to separate this that's awake in you from the moment that's here. If we really can get that, we begin to see how it can't be separate. All of us right now, if I were to ask, are you aware? You would say yes, unless you're asleep, but even then you are aware because something would be waking up. If sound were loud enough, something is awake even when we're sleeping. But so this that's aware is we might say the background, isn't it? The formless background, the background we might call spirit. And it's what we share. It doesn't belong to somebody separate. Yes, it's moving as consciousness in the body-mind, but it's not different. It's our essential beingness that is seeing right now, that is awareing right now. And if we let ourselves really explore what is this as it's moving in the body-mind, we come to the true heart. I'm not talking about this little organ in the body. I'm talking about the true heart that actually is connected. It's here. It's here for life. It's here for one another. It's here for you. As you went around and spoke your name, there was this like a little silent voice inside of me that said, I love you. I love you. In case any of you haven't heard that today yet, I want to tell you I love you. One time Adi Shanti was giving a talk about love, and he suggested a practice that we might use before we relate to each other. And that was just what I was saying. It was a quiet, I love you. Just a way to open to our essential meeting place before the conversation. And for me, that little suggestion, this quiet I love you, just began to happen spontaneously. It just kind of took off. And I've been sharing it with everyone I've talked to since then because it's been so powerful in my own experience. And what happened was I just began to say that to everything. Everything. I love you, color red. I love you, light coming through the skylight. I love you, little dandelion sticking up from the crack in the sidewalk. I love you to the waiters at the restaurant. I love you to the taxi driver. I love you, little worrying mind. I love you, pain in the knee. Taking a shower. I love you, belly. And what began to happen is that this just kept giving itself in that way, in a most surprising way that brought incredible joy. So, for whatever it's worth, I pass that along. Now, when we say I love you, there really is no separate I and no separate you. So some people find it just easier to just remind themselves love is here, But people that have been working with this as a practice, one man said to me, he said, I always thought I had to love something, feel love for something before I said I love you. But this way, it just evokes it. It evokes it even before. I know. I don't need to know. I don't need to agree in order for this love to move. And then a woman who's in a group that I facilitate, she said, I just can't believe how efficient this is. I have spent years doing affirmations, years of therapy, trying to be more loving, on and on and on. But this just, right here. And she said, and then my mind started getting on board with this, And why not? Because it feels so much better to love than to judge. It feels so much more joyful to love than to operate from fear. Now, some people have said, well, isn't this a fake it till you make it kind of thing? And I would counter that by saying no. Because the me or the you that thinks they're supposed to be loving everything is not what can do it. We keep looking in the wrong place. We keep looking in our idea of an identified separate self to be the agent of love. And that's not the agent of love. We have to look deeper than that. We have to look to this heart, out of which everything is flowing. By whatever name. It really can't be named. That's why it's empty. It's empty of definition. It's actually empty of a name. We could call it lots of names, but that's not the felt sense. So to me, it's just a reminder, this little practice is just a reminder to our consciousness of where its true home is. We're so used to imagining our consciousness is located here in our thoughts, in our mind, right? So we're just inviting, you, consciousness, you, awareness, you, true nature. We're just inviting this experience of what you are back into its true home, where it's not just aware or wise or intelligent. It actually loves and is the movement of compassion. To me, the heart of awareness is really a synonym for what in the Buddhist tradition we might call prajna, heart, wisdom. It's the heart of love, the heart of compassion, and the wisdom that comes from knowing we're not separate, and those really can't be separated. So that's why it feels like as we're living these human lives, can we open to this that wants to move as love in each of us, wants to move as compassion in each of us. Now, all of us probably have experience of walls maybe around the heart, right? Barriers to love or loving or receiving or giving. Want me a little louder? Okay, I will try. I once had a client whose mother was totally deaf, and he said, "Have you ever tried shouting, 'I love you'?" But I'll try, "I love you." Oh my gosh. But to go back to the barriers, we've all put some barriers on around the heart, right? Trying to protect ourselves from being hurt, trying to protect ourselves from pain. But we may never have really looked into whether or not love needs protection. What needs protection? What needs defending? Is it love? Or is it an idea of a self that's separate from that love? That doesn't mean that we may not have to look into the nature of those walls or those barriers, but we think there's a somebody inside. And that's what I would encourage any of us to look into. Who's inside the prison? Who's inside the barrier? Is there somebody that's actually needing protection? Is love actually capable of being harmed? This I know is not the love that most of us know, but the love that most of us know, which is often conditional, comes right out of this. It comes right out of this emptiness. And part of the spiritual journey is allowing love to empty us. And are we available to be emptied? There are lots of ways life has of emptying of our, of our illusions. The illusions of being separate. The illusions of being a somebody that is separate from the world, from a God, from nature, from one another, and even from our own self. How often, how many times a day do you say things that indicate some separation from yourself? I'm disappointed in myself. I love myself. I feel like, I would like myself to be better. Who is the I, who is the myself? When we say, I hate myself, I love myself, who's who? I think it's a relevant question. Really look into it. Who is the I and who is the myself in all these judgments that we make? And then just imagine, or better yet, feel into this heart, the true self, that doesn't make those judgments. It just isn't judging you. It's just not judging a moment of experience, because it's its own experience. It can't separate from it. It's like your hand judging your foot or something. Now sometimes we do that, or we bump into something and we think, you stupid thing, you shouldn't have. But it's one body. We're one body in the wholeness of being, a single essence, one body. Now, the mind can't wrap itself around the infinite, because the mind of thought only operates in time. We're not talking about the unborn Buddha mind here. We're talking about the mind of thought. The mind of thought lives in time. So that's why our identification with this body and this mind is not the agent of love. But we keep thinking, I should be more loving, right? Haven't you all had that thought? really should be more loving, and we keep looking to the I that we think we are for that love, and it just can't deliver. I mean, sometimes there's openness and availability for this love to come through, obviously, and hopefully we've all had experience of that. But the one that we think should be somewhere else is just not who we are. So that's why it never quite works. It never quite works. So when I talk about life or the spiritual journey emptying us of these things that appear, and I use that in quotes, they're apparent obstacles. There really aren't any true obstacles. They're only apparent obstacles because we've given them power as something that exists separate from our true nature. But what could be separate? What is not an expression of the all in all, of totality? What would you exclude from totality? A friend of mine said one time, where would you send something that you want to be rid of in the infinite that you are? I always like that. In the infinite you are, where would you send something you want to be rid of? You see, our task as spiritual practitioners is to look into what is this that we think is an obstacle? What is this we call fear? What is this we call hate? What is this? Really? Not to judge it, not to make a big project out of improving a self. That sometimes just postpones our surrender for a really long time. Not to say that there aren't things we might want to look into or change or whatever. Of course that's true, but when our interest is in what is the truth of who we are, when our interest is who am I really and truly, rather than assuming that you know. There's every branch of science, it operates out of the assumptions and findings of the past, whether we're talking about physical science or psychological science. It has that background. It looks from those things that have been discovered, but it has to stay open to what's new, right? And how many of those theories have turned out to be false when we look deeper? And I'm just asking you to open to the possibility that the theory you have about who you are may not be who you are. And are you open to looking into the assumptions that you've made? I am just this body. There's a body here for sure. We're not denying that. Well, I'm just these thoughts, this memory, these judgments, this conditioning. Really? That seems to come and go, doesn't it? What doesn't come and go? What's been here through every experience of your life? And isn't that what gives us the sense of continuing? This that's been awake, this that's been aware. The knowing of our experience. We could say, this awareness is the knowing of the moment. It's the knowing of experience, not an intellectual knowing. It's knowing that you're sitting. Something knows that your belly is full or empty. Well, you say, well, I know it. And then I would ask, well, who is that I? Who is it? Because if we really go deeply enough into that question, something else may open up that's not known to the mind. It's unknown. And yet it knows itself. It knows itself. And that's what awakening is all about. This wakes up to itself. It's not a separate me that figures it out. We're open to the unknown. And when we're still and quiet and really interested, who am I? What am I? What is this life? What is love? It could be any of these questions that invite something to arise from the silence, from the emptiness of not knowing, and reveal itself. And I know many of you here have had moments of that kind of revelation. But then what do we do with it? A lot of times we just go back to who we thought we were. And we're just operating from conditioned mind again. if we don't make that wrong, but we keep being interested in truth, what's true here, you know, we all know we have many, many experiences in our daily life of feeling separate, right? You're driving your car. You feel separate from the other guy in the car. Often, beep, 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 you're going too slow, or you cut me off, or whatever. But deeper than all of that, deeper than the play of consciousness, deeper than this sense of operating in the dual world, which is the only place our mind operates, in the dual world. We're not making that wrong. Apparently, this that's undivided, you know, that can't be divided, it divides itself in order to see itself, love itself, experience itself. That's what seems to happen in my experience. This that we can't separate, it appears to separate in order to dance. To do the dance with itself, you know, whatever that dance is. So the love part feels like that is our invitation to be what we truly are in this world. God knows we need more of that, don't we? Especially in this particular time. And loving doesn't mean you have to agree with someone. Loving doesn't mean that you have to go to the movies with someone. You know, loving doesn't mean you can never say no, or set what we might call a boundary if you need to in relationship or with an aspect of life. That's how you love yourself. Love moves in this expression. And so we're not trying to make it look a certain way. We're just inviting ourselves to stay open to how this love might want to move in this moment, in this relationship, in this situation. We can ask our inner guide, how does love want to move in this situation? This one I'm finding so difficult. You know, and if we don't keep an idea of what it's supposed to look like, we might be surprised at how love actually wants to move. Because this that's so compassionate is not just an emotional compassion. They're there, yes, I'll agree with you that everything sucks, you know, and then you'll feel better because I think so too. It's not just that kind of compassion. It might be the compassion that moves to really question our assumptions. It might be Manjushri's sword that comes to chop off our head or to chop away illusions. You know? What I'm trying to invite us to look into maybe a little bit more deeply is it possible to just stay open and see from the perspective of openness what's actually here? Because our true nature isn't like shouldn't. It illuminates what's here. And when we begin to see from that perspective just the what is of the moment of our experience, now we have an opportunity to look more deeply. What is it made of? What is fear actually made of? You know? Yeah, there's an energy that we feel. Can we stick with the energy? Can we directly experience the energy without the story? Same with anger, same with any kind of emotion. Can we experience it fully, completely, without separation? And I'm not talking about expressing it, I'm talking about experiencing it. Experiencing it in your own experience from a perspective of no separation. Usually we're trying to get rid of something, aren't we? Trying to get rid of these things and hang on to these things. But life is whole. So all the energy we put on trying to get rid of whoever, whatever, you know, it just fuels, because that's the energy of resistance. So what happens if we experience resistance? No separation from the felt sense of resistance. instead of trying to get rid of that feeling if it arises, it begins to soften. Something begins to transform the minute we're not separate from it. Because the minute we're not separate from it, we're actually operating more and more from true nature, which doesn't separate itself from anything. Because it knows, it experiences its oneness. And that oneness moves, ultimately, eventually, it moves as love. It moves as love, the sense that we're one. And that's the movement of love, is knowing that. So maybe I'll just, how are we doing? I might just invite you to do a little experiment, if you're willing, just a little investigation. And so maybe just invite yourself to close your eyes and bring your attention to your heart. Not just that one that's beating in your chest, but that's maybe the general area where you may feel the energy of the heart. Just give yourself a minute or two to move into an experience of the heart space. We're not trying to make it become anything. We're just looking into it from this awareness that has no judgment. And so let your awareness move inside this heart space and just look around. Like using a flashlight in the dark, in a dark room or something. Just see what you discover when you simply let your awareness see from the heart space what is there in your experience. Images may come, stories may come, energies may present themselves, feelings may arise. Nothing is excluded here. So just see what wants to show up when you explore the space of your own heart. We may have been longing for love, imagining that it's far away. But follow the longing back into the heart, because that's where your longing is originating. We don't long for something that we haven't known. We might be curious, but we don't long for it. We only long for something we know. We might have an image that there's this, what I call a fisherman, the fisherman of love in your own heart that's casting out this line of longing to catch the elusive ego that's swimming around, and then it begins to reel it into itself. When we follow our longing back to its origin. maybe we can have a sense that this idea of who we are is like a fish that's been swimming around looking for love when all the time it's been swimming in an ocean of love, an ocean of awareness. Not someplace we get to someday. It's here now. Maybe we find pain in the heart. Can we invite love into that pain? The true heart just tenderly embraces what is here. Unlike our mind that's constantly judging what is here. See if you can just get a little felt sense of this aspect, this dimension of your being that accepts all because it is all, that loves all because it can't separate itself from its own expression. We just sit another couple minutes and then let whatever wants to reveal itself in your experience do so. Once again, we're not trying to change it, whatever you find, but we're seeing it from openness. Compassionate awareness. What is here when you put your attention in the heart space? And so whenever you're ready, you can begin to open your eyes. Take a few moments. So what did any of you discover? Emptiness? Yeah.
I think for me there's sort of this realization of whatever's happening, whatever's expressing itself, love, curiosity, confusion, whatever, is to take one step back from that. Like, what's happening behind that? Like, can I see through that, or what's observing that? And then step behind that too. Like, what's seeing out through this perception, eyes or feelings or whatever. Like, is it possible to back up 2 or 3 steps until there's just this broader sense of it's the universe looking through this
Yeah.
presence, the smile.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then what happens to the place you started when you do that? The feelings or the sensation or the whatever.
It expands.
Yeah.
It just like, it almost sort of like vaporizes.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, yeah. And now we're back to
Yeah.
the mystery.
Because I think what happens is I step out of that one emotion or that one expression,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, it's fear or something, and you step back a couple steps, then, I mean, you know, it's hard to put words
Well,
to
it
these
is.
things.
Yeah, it is. And that is one way that we can definitely, and sometimes quite quickly, you know, sort of come into the recognition of that larger, faster mystery, whatever it is. There's another way, and that is going deeper into that experience, you know, rather than backing up. Because we'll discover the same thing, you know. But most of us are much more comfortable, in a sense, moving away into this, which is beautiful. It's not. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but sometimes those pieces of ourself that don't seem to be liberated from this kind of practice or expression, those things just seem to keep coming back to be seen through. And by that I mean, you know, let's just say there might be anger in the top layer. And so it's, okay, what's beneath anger? A lot of times it's grief or sadness, or could be fear, right? Okay, so what's underneath that? Do you know, so we keep going down, 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 we might say, okay, often vulnerability. How many of us have spent our whole life trying to avoid ever feeling vulnerable again? Lots of us, right? But in the spiritual journey, we at some point come up against vulnerability. And what is that? Right? There's a sense of being helpless, maybe. Ego may not be in charge. There are things about this world we can't control, and so forth. So, you know, there are lots of ways. Whether we're going out or we're going in, we're going to end up the same place because that's what everything is. So I'm glad that you know that discovery of backing up, you know, things just go you know, into this mystery, transcendent, you know, true nature, whatever. But it's also possible to discover that when we're not moving away, but moving in. Yeah.
I thought it was, thank you for the exercise and the talk. For me, it has the quality of inner child work in a way.
Mm-hmm.
That, as I invoke the inner friend or loving awareness, that being here allows me to come into relationship with the little ones.
Yeah.
I call them, and
Yeah.
that they start to trust that I really don't need them to be in a particular way to be here, that they can be with me.
Yes.
And,
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's
sweet, isn't it?
yeah.
It's sweet and liberating.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because so often those little children, if we want to look at them like that, because a lot of the stuff that hangs us up, you know,
Yeah.
had a history, right?
Right.
But a lot of times those little children in us are just like knocking at the door, and we just keep saying, "Go away, you again," you know, boom, and we slam the door in their face.
Right.
When all they're wanting is to come back into the wholeness
Yes.
that is our true heart.
Yes.
So that's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that when I became aware was that there was an effort of looking, of searching, and that was getting in the way of the emptiness and the love and the openness. And so, it was almost like the effort was being driven by a should, like I should be finding something.
Yeah, right.
But then this always happens in these exercises, just like right at the end, when it's time to stop, something happens. And because it's kind of like the should or the effort relaxes.
Yeah.
And I did also have a feeling of a childlike feeling of being vulnerable. And then it kind of shifted back and forth between the feeling and the image of an infant, me as an infant.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that piece up about efforting, because the trying is our separation. Do you know? And you were feeling it, right? Something here is trying to do it right. Do you know? And in our true nature, if we could just, I'm using that word, but I'd rather evoke the sense of it. It isn't trying, it's just being. It's just being itself, right? And so the one who's trying to be open may not be able to notice that something's already open. The one who's trying to be present maybe needs to just step back and see if something's already present. Do you know? The one who's trying to be maybe needs to just ask, well, is beingness already here? And then gradually we keep realizing that all the things we were trying to be actually are already present. Openness is here. Presence is here. Awareness is here. Peace is here. Even if our mind is in conflict, is there something that's at peace here? Yeah, I guess so. The space is not in conflict with our thoughts or whatever, So yeah, the relaxation of effort is, there's a place for effort and there's a place to let go of effort, and I think it just shows itself, just like it did in your experience. There was something that saw that something was trying, and then it began to let go, and then it could embrace this infant, just hold it in the loving arms of love. It's all it ever wanted, just to be held in love. It didn't want to be whipped into shape. Did any of you really want to be whipped into shape? I don't think so. Yeah.
The first 2 or 3 things that came up for me, I noticed and judged.
Yes.
And they were fear, discomfort, lack of confidence. And I felt the need to immediately say, oh, but there's also love, and there's wisdom, and I felt that those were true too, but I think they were really in reaction to the first ones. And I have been trying to embrace and be compassionate with those feelings when they come up, the negative feelings. But there was this really strong judgment, like, no, I don't want to be that way. I don't want to have those be the first things, but they were. So. Well,
and that's where our devotion to truth allows that to happen. And what is seeing in you was seeing judgment. It was seeing what you're describing, right? So this that's present never went anywhere, but your attention, and your identification, has held on to these ideas that this shouldn't be here, even though it is. I mean, we do that all the time. Well, I shouldn't have felt that, but you did. So what are we going to do with that? You see, and so it feels like that's when we can get curious, really curious. Well, what is this? What is this? Not trying to erase it, but actually getting curious about the truth of what's arising. And that what you described is often what we do. Is like we have a little argument. One side of ourselves is judging, and another side of you shouldn't judge, and then we're judging the judgment, and then, we have this struggle, right? Trying to be the way we think we should be. We miss that something is already here that knows how to love. It knows how to be at peace with the moment. It knows how to open to it. It knows how to be present, because it's not the one that we think we are. It's what we actually are in the deeper sense. So, yeah. And just that, I think that one of our greatest allies in the so-called spiritual search is our own integrity, our own desire to be truthful with ourselves, especially. because usually we want to everything look big, beautiful, flowers, nice, blooming, ta-da, somebody has arrived. But the fact of the matter is, in awakening, there's nobody that arrives. But we see that this that we are is simply arriving every moment as this feeling, as this exchange, as that rubbing of your eye. It's just arriving moment to moment to moment. So thank you for your truthfulness with yourself. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Is it time?
Just about allotted.
Okay, I have to do one more thing then, because this is like, well, I'll read it to you and then you'll know what it is. It's just a poem that I wrote once upon a time. What can be said about love? What can be said about love? Nothing really. We're either being love or we're talking about it. Talk is cheap. Love can't be bought. It's not about flowery words or the agony or ecstasy of emotion. It's not even about relationship or merging union with the divine. Where are there two? And yet, this wordless pull of connection, even when the mind wants no connection. What is that unsought warmth? That melting of resistance, that fire that makes even iron turn to liquid, or a caterpillar dissolve before wings emerge. Love's only true language is being. Demand love and it will flee. Bargain with love and you will lose. Eventually, you will rejoice in defeat. Love refuses all separation. Love moves, responds, touches, returns the unwanted pieces of your life back to wholeness. Its language is truth, and truth speaks love, but these are words and not alive until your heart opens. Every moment, love is gently knocking from inside, longing to flow out. But we are busy looking elsewhere, searching in the marketplace of needs to fill the emptiness that is itself vast love. What can be said about love? Nothing really. These words fail. We're either being love or we're talking about it. Choose the former if you have a choice, for love alone transforms. So thank you very much for your attention, and try that I love you practice, okay? See what happens.
Thank you. All right, our host today.
I'm David. I'm your host today, and I'll be bringing around the Donna Bowl and coercing you to. There will be treats out there, and also you can make tea, and just leave your cups in the sink, and I will take care of them for you. And there is a sign-up sheet if you want to get notifications, either through the mail or through email, or if you're new, that's the way to be in touch with the Sangha. And also there is an opportunity to continue your conversation after the meeting by going to lunch with other people that might be interested. And that happens at 12:30 out in front of the door on the sidewalk.
Thank you. Any announcements?
Who's our speaker next week?
Next week is Joe Rodriguez. Joe Rodriguez is a Zen practitioner in the Suzuki Roshi lineage, studying under Fu Schroeder, the abiding abbess at Green Gulch Farm Zen Center. He serves as a board member of the San Francisco Zen Center. As an executive and LGBT activist, his practice is to bring awareness, truth, and forgiveness to daily life. His topic will be Pink, Proud, and Present, realizing our Buddha nature as LGBT practitioners. June 18th. Any other items? Okay, let's join for the dedication. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from the sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
This hand needs to hold this one because this one is super warm.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.